Welcome to another movie review, here on the Btwixt channel on YouTube and the German Pointer channel on BitChute. And we've got a very interesting movie we want to review today. It's called WAG the Dog. I think a lot of people will have heard about it. But before we go into that, we've got four of us on here today, so obviously we're going to have a lot to say about this particular movie. So first of all, Btwixt, it's your channel, so thanks for asking me to host this. How are you doing?
Well, thanks for hosting it, Brizer. Yeah, I'm fine. And I was just speaking to Pox before coming on, and I was telling him that I watched this 2 nights ago. I'd originally watched it a year and a half ago, give or take. And watching it the second time around, it seems a lot more devious than my memory. So I'm looking forward to digging into it. There are some funny parts as well. Obviously, it's a satire, it's a comedy, so we'll have a lot to go through.
Indeed. Also joined us, Pox Populi. Hi Pox, how are you? Last time we spoke, we did another review, was The Truman Show, which is another interesting movie. Yeah. So this one, I'm sure we've got a lot to say on this one, so how are you doing?
I'm all right. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to this chat as well. I think it'll be a very interesting film to analyze and bring into the 21st century, because this one was made in, like The Truman Show, quite some time ago. This is from 1997, but so much has happened that it's almost like it was predicting our future.
That's it. Yes, and also to introduce a guy I know quite well. When I was doing radio, he was a regular guest on my show, and he's also asked me onto his show, which he does now every Saturday, I believe, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Republic Broadcasting Network. And that's Frederick C Blackburn. Frederick, how are you doing?
Greetings all from the snowy mountains of North Kakalaki. Can you believe we've got snow today? But yes, I'm so happy to be here. We watched this again. And again, the point of this was made in 1997, and what we all know about what was going on in 1997 now that we didn't know at the time of the release of the film, and to watch it with these eyes. So we had a big Wacky Wednesday film fest. I made a nice dinner, and we all sat. The whole crew got in, and sat and watched it together, and we were all just like, this was a completely different movie to what we saw back in the day. So I've got a big bucket of rocks of things I saw that I can't wait to share with you.
Yeah.
Back to you.
That's great. Okay, so I'll just give a kind of a brief synopsis just so get people an idea who haven't seen it. And I would recommend anybody who hasn't seen it to go watch it, because it's just like, your jaw will drop on so many things. But anyway, as I said, it was made in 1997. It's an American political satire, black comedy, produced and directed by Barry Levinson and starring Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro as the two main actors. And the film centers on a spin doctor and a Hollywood producer who fabricate a war in Albania to distract voters from a presidential sex scandal. And there's well-known kind of actors in it as well. Who are they now? There's Anne Hesh. So Robert De Niro plays a guy called Conrad Breen, who he's a kind of, I'd say he's definitely deep state. We don't know who he actually works for, but he's a mover and shaker in the the deep state. Let's call it that. And then you got Anne Hesh, who's Winifred Ames. She's his assistant. Then you got Dustin Hoffman, who's a major Hollywood producer. His name's Stanley Motz. You got Dennis Leary as a guy called Fad King, who kind of works a lot with Stanley Motz. You got good old Willie Nelson in there as well, playing a guy called Johnny Dean, who puts together all the music scenes and all those, which I think are very good. You got William H. Macy is in there, Craig T. Nelson, and of course you got Woody Harrelson, who plays the Sergeant William Schumann. And there's a couple of well-known faces in there. James Belushi kind of makes a cameo appearance, as does Merle Haggard and Jay Leno. So, so basically, there's a sex scandal hits the White House as usual. We've seen this before, and it's amazing how this all happened. You know, when this movie made, and all these things were kind of going on in and around the same time. So it's Robert De Niro character, Conrad Breen, has to sort this out, and so he creates a situation where we need a war to kind of distract people from the presidential election, which is coming up in about 10 days' time, I believe. And he gets Dustin Hoffman on the case to produce this war, and it's all fake. It's all done in a Hollywood studio, and it kind of continues on from there. So we'll leave it at that, and then we'll kind of we'll move through it, because there's lots of different things going on, and which ties it all together. But it's brilliant the way it's done, I have to say. I only watched it 2 nights ago as well for the first time. I've heard about it a lot, but I've never actually watched it. I've seen different snippets of it, but I haven't seen the full thing. And again, as I watched it, it was like, holy crap, my God, this is just so real. This is Hollywood telling us what Hollywood does best, basically. So, okay, who wants to go? We'll start off with you, Btwixt. Give us your take on it. What you give us? Yeah, you can start off.
Yeah, sure. Well, I should just say that, you know, they have this slogan. It's something like never change horses midstream. And they keep, you know, every time they have a commercial, this ad comes on, and it's about, you know, voting for the incumbent or whatever, the current president. And I think he's in China. And there's some, as you said, there's some scandal. Some young woman has accused him of something sexual at the White House, and I think this precedes what happened with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. I think that came out a while after this film, but I think the people writing this were aware, very likely they were aware of Slick Willie. So yeah, there's that. He's in China, and this guy Breen, he's come in. He's called Mr. Fix-It. And as you said, he's trying to take the heat off the president by creating a new story. And this story is that Albania, little Albania, is they hate America. They hate the Americans' freedoms. You know, this type of thing. They're fanatics, and I think they're going to bring some bomb. They were trying to bring some bomb into the USA via Canada, and yeah, he gets this guy Motz, who's in Hollywood. And it's funny because when Breen and his assistant go to Hollywood, this guy's mansion, they immediately say, wow, his place is bigger than the White House. So it kind of tells you as the viewer that Hollywood is more powerful than Washington. You know, Hollywood is where things happen in reality. And yeah, we'll get into other stuff, but I will say, watching it the second time around, I couldn't help think of COVID, this scamdemic, and how that was manufactured and how that was a media-made product, you know, doled out to the masses. So yeah, we might get into that later, but yeah, that's it for now.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and just interesting what you're saying there, that timing, because the movie was released a month before the news broke of the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal. So you have to wonder, was this going to happen anyway? Was this all, were they kind of just, they knew this in advance, I think, you know? And then there was a bombing in the, what's it called, the Al-Shifa pharmaceutical factory in Sudan by the Clinton administration in August '98. And then they were also trying to initiate a kind of a bombing campaign in Iraq during Clinton's impeachment trial. And then we had the Yugoslavian war going on at the same time. It was kind of finishing up, but there was a lot of stuff going on there. There was the Kosovo war, there was all that happening, and there was a lot of ethnic Albanians involved. I'm wondering like why they picked Albania, but and I just thought one funny moment in it, like when Breen's secretary asked him, like, well, who are we going to go to war with? And he says, I'm working on it. So,
yeah.
pretty good stuff, you know.
I think Brizer, they also choose Albania because the American public don't know anything about Albania whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the idea is if they don't know anything about the country, they're automatically going to hate it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. And it's a haven for terrorist activity and everything, but it's some crazy country over there, again, nobody would heard of, you know. So, and then when you look at all this, the war on terror, which happened again 4 or 5 years after this movie was made, you know, and what was going on there. Yeah. Okay, we'll hand over to Pox then, and let's get your take on it.
Yeah, it's as a story, it's a very good one. The concept is very good. I first saw this film when I was a teenager, so that's quite a long time ago. And it's always remained in my mind, especially when big news events happen. And then with things that have happened in recent years, this was certainly a film that was definitely in my mind. But I hadn't seen it for quite some time, so I went and watched it again. Now, as an idea, it's very good. The execution of the narrative, I think, well, it's interesting. This film is rather short. It's only about an hour and a half long, and it doesn't waste any time, which I think is credit to the director, Barry Levinson, but also the screenwriter, David Mamet, who cinephiles will recognize the name. He's a very, very famous screenwriter. And I actually looked into it. He was added onto the project sort of laterally. And there was actually quite a bit of controversy with the Writers Guild over who should get the writing credit, because there's another writer who's credited alongside David Mamet in the opening titles, but he actually was basically fired and replaced by Mamet, but his name was left on the credits because of the work he had done setting up the script. But everything else apparently is the work of Mamet. And he's characteristically very good at writing very tight, no bones about it. There's no filler in his scripts, especially in the dialogue. And so this movie, it just starts from the word go. Robert De Niro, his character, goes to the White House and is taken down to some dark basement and immediately is informed of the problem and immediately starts cooking up solutions. And then the film just carries us along right from that opening scene. As far as takes, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to talk about the film chronologically and then share some of our views on it as we discussed various scenes. But I was just have some notes here, and there's so much to get into. I think it's best to just kind of start as the movie gets going, and as you said, the beating in the basement. They have to get this ball moving quickly because there's an election in 10 days' time, and we got to kind of sort this out. So, give us just kind of go briefly your first thoughts on the beginning, and then we'll pass it on to Blackbird then, and we'll go around the table. Well, that's always my thoughts with these things is just modernity and how false it is and how easy it is to falsify everything about modernity. I think about this all the time when I ponder over the narrative, the Nuremberg narrative of the Second World War, or what I often call the Steven Spielberg version of history. And the curious thing is that you would think with photography and film that the documentation of history would be more accurate than compared to, say, ancient history or medieval history. We all are taught, so we kind of accept, and we know that we should take ancient accounts with a grain of salt, or even doubt them wholeheartedly. Tacitus and his account of Germania. Okay, we know that that's him trying to inspire Romans to stop being so effete and cosmopolitan and weak by giving them this account of these brave and sort of like noble savage almost barbarians. The histories of Herodotus, we know, okay, there's some propaganda, there's some exaggeration, there's no way that these numbers of casualties the size of these armies could be accurate. He's exaggerating to make the story more epic. Okay, we get that. And then we get to the modern era, and it just seems actually like some of the accounts that have photographic evidence and film evidence are actually, no, we need to be equally, if not even more, dubious, because the ability to use special effects, editing, green screens, film studios, extras, actors, it's just endless now. And so I'm always struck by the irony of how modern life is almost faker than and more dubious than events that happened, 2,500 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, good points. Yeah, and you do have to wonder, like, what we've been told is going on in the media. We do have to question how actually true it is. And of course, there's a lot of talk about a lot of these school shootings and different events going on around the world. Are they real or are they fake, or what is it, a false flag, or what is it that's happening? But at least we have to question it, because none of us are there, so we can't really tell for sure whether it's real. And that's the power media has, that it can just put out a narrative, make up a good story, put it together, put it out on the TV screens, in the newspapers, whatever, and bingo, suddenly everyone's involved, everyone's distracted and talking about it. And as I said, the last couple of years is a perfect example of that. So Blackbird, over to you. Give us your thoughts on the first scenes of the movie.
Oh, great points. I'm sitting here taking notes like a madman. Yes. And the observation of this is warfare. This is modern warfare. And people that follow my work know I talk a lot about 4th generation warfare and 5th generation warfare, and that deep fakes and artificial intelligence are a major part of 5th generation warfare tactics. And it's all about selling the deception. And so because this is warfare, you go to those classic descriptions of warfare. All warfare is based on deception. Sun Tzu, the Israeli Mossad, by way of deception ye shall make war. You go back to the Talmudic roots of this, in the Talmud, it's like Jews may use subterfuges and lies to circumvent a Gentile, and so you have this long nature of this idea of tricking someone in warfare. And at the very beginning, the big fade in on the black screen, the text message of why does a dog wag its tail? Because a dog is smarter than its tail. If the tail were smarter, the tail would wag the dog. And so this idea of you're bringing in this fixer, this is the default smartest guy in the room. Everybody's looking to him to fix the problem. And the first horrifying thing about this, like the previous people were saying, is putting this in context of what was going on. And for my personal storyline, my tale of woe, this was when my career was in its ascendancy. I was, taking off with my own business. I'd formed my own corporation, International Telecommunications Consultant. And in a way, I can identify this guy who's called in the middle of the night because there's a problem, and all he knows is he's got to pack a bag and be at the front door, and he's going to be flown somewhere, and he's going to sit down in some room, and somebody's going to tell him the problem and expect him to be able to fix it. And just tell everybody what he needs to fix the problem. And so in a way, that is what I was doing in the telecommunications world, but also that's when I was starting to really push my political career here in the great state of North Kakalaki. And so, I was really looking at what was happening in the political landscape, but, now realizing what was really going on in that political landscape, was completely 180 degrees opposite of everything we were told by the television and the newspapers and all the media, right? And so when you look at the history of this, American Hero is the 1993 satirical conspiracy novel that the movie's based upon. And it's all about a plan by Lee Atwater. If you remember him, I think he's one of those white guys they took out early on. He was a strategist for George H.W. Bush. And it was about how to ensure him a second term. And if you remember, of course, H.W. Bush didn't get a second term. They made the way for Bill Clinton. And so Bill Clinton was president when the film came out. And so this idea of this fixers being brought in to cover up that the fact that the sitting president is a pedophile and just got caught. But yet that's not the problem. The problem is exposing the power structure of the White House. And so it's not a problem that the guy's a pedophile. We're fine with that. It's just we can't let the public know the president's a pedophile. And so, this whole thing of just from the very beginning, the motives of these people are questionable. Is you're covering up for pedophiles. Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Robert Maxwell, Les Wexner, all these people were setting the stage for 9/11, the big deception of all deceptions, the big wag the dog that I was backstage at, right? So this movie, like I said, it's just, to see this film, with these eyes was just, I thank you guys just for making me do that for one. I just, and I'm looking forward to the rest of what you have to say about what you've seen in this. So I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, the 90s was an interesting time because up to then, most of us thought we were living in a pretty normal, pretty decent kind of place. Okay, there was corruption and there was different things going on, but it was a kind of a time of for a lot of people, of things are looking good. The economy was booming, everything was going well for everybody, and it was a perfect time to start bringing in what they call their new world order, so to speak, and to let's get the whole thing kicked off. And there's a series of movies that were made, and we'd be talking about the Truman Show that came out around the same time, and then this one in '98. And when you think what's happened since then, as you said, 9/11 was the big one. Then the fake war on terror that continued on into that. And we had the whole financial collapse, 2008. Different things going on around the world, bring us up to 2020 and the great scamdemic as well. And now the Russia-Ukraine thing, now the whole Gaza-Israel thing. And it's just constant media pumping out stuff all the time. And it's leading, I think, to a lot of confusion and kind of chaotic thinking because nobody knows what's going on here. And it's not a great way to have people in a kind of a complete state of confusion, because that's, as you said, Frederick, it's a form of warfare because everyone feels disempowered because they just don't know what's going on. So we'll go around the table again. Btwixt, any more thoughts yourself?
Yeah, I was just thinking there that I remember reading an article that's many years ago. It was some philosopher, I think his name was Baudrillard, and he was on about, I can't remember, it was a simulacrum, something like this, and we have these different realities. And he was saying that he was talking about the Gulf War, and he said that if you want to see what's happening in Iraq, you have to go to America and watch the TV, because the idea was the war was being created in the United States. And he was saying something like, there's nothing, if you actually go to Iraq, there's nothing to see. There's just a desert and some scorpions. If you want to see the war, you have to go to where the cameras are in the United States. And there's a part of this film, and we're kind of getting into it now because the original plan doesn't work out. There is another power structure in the American government that's working against Breen. And they eventually put the halters on this Albanian war thing. And that's when Breen has to, he uses Motz. Motz is a very creative guy. He's a writer, he's a producer, and he's always complaining, Motz, that producers never get the credit. And we get into that later because that's a big part of the film as well. Motz has a massive ego, and he doesn't like the idea that he doesn't get enough credit for his genius, his creative genius. Now, he's a kind of frustrated artist. But getting back to the idea of, war, TV, the media, when the Albanian war disintegrates and it's not going to continue, Breen there's a number of them, and they're sitting around some conference room or whatever, and they're watching the TV, and it's announced on TV that the war is over, that the Albanian government is going to work with the American government, and they're going to make sure they wipe out the fanatics in their midst, and nothing's going to happen to the US now. They have agreements, and Breen he's raging about this, because this was his project, his pet project. He was there to kind of make this war bigger. And the others say, oh, we could still do this, we could still do that. And Breen, he's a very clever guy. He just throws his hands up in the air and he says, it's done, it's done. And they say, how do you know it's done? And he says something like, I saw it on TV. So he's looking at it through the eyes of your average American citizen. Once they watch it on the TV, they take it as gospel. So if the TV tells them the war with Albania is over, the American citizen will say the war with Albania is over, and that's that.
Yeah, and of course, kind of preceding that, of course, where they tried to get the war going, and it's amazing how they have the media right there at the end of the phone, and you've got the who's the guy who talks in the Congress? He gets up. He's the press guy who stands up and he's literally got the earpiece in his ear, and he's getting instructions from the guy on the phone who's just calling him up and telling him exactly what to say. And sure enough, you see it there on the TV. It says, yeah, well, we got this Albanian war now, and we gotta do something about these guys. And how often have we seen that? Those damn Iraqis, those damn Russians. It's incredible how they do it. And when they're in the plane, when they're kind of scheming this, Winfred, who's the assistant to Breen, says, like, why Albania? And he goes, well, why not? He said, well, what have they done to us? And they says, well, what have they done for us? What do you know about them? And she says, nothing. See, they keep to themselves, shifty, untrustable. That's exactly how they sell this. We don't know who are these people, they could do anything to us. So we can't trust these people. So yeah, it's and then they push it out there, and suddenly America's on the brink of a war with Albania. And I'm sure the Albanians are wondering, like, what the hell did we do here? They just picked it on a map and said, yeah, we'll go for these guys. No one's heard of the place. And as I said, then it kind of kicks off, but then the CIA kind of get to interrupt, and I think there's a very good scene there in the restaurant. So anyway, I'll hand over to Pox then if he wants to take it on from here.
Yeah, actually, I think it would be good to just rewind slightly, because when they get the news, they're in a recording studio, and it's the president's rival, electoral rival, who's a senator, and they're employing Willie Nelson and this chorus of very over-the-top singers to record a sort of a theme song for the war, which I do have some thoughts about. And but just so what they see is the electoral rival making a public announcement saying, "I've just got word from the the State Department, the CIA, that the Albanians are willing to work with the United States and root out the terrorists." But just to rewind a little bit before that scene, how does that happen? Well, what I found interesting was that the CIA, some CIA agents, are tracking Robert De Niro's character and Anne Heche's character, and Dustin Hoffman's as well by this point, and they've twigged onto the fact that they are doing something shady, and so they pull them over in a strangely rainy day in Hollywood, California, but okay, that doesn't happen very often. But anyway, and they take him to this Mexican bar. And what I thought was interesting was just how this scene portrays how the CIA and other various alphabet agencies don't work in concert with the presidential administration. So the president has employed De Niro, and then De Niro has sought the services of Dustin Hoffman's character, the Hollywood mega super successful genius film producer. But the CIA is working against the president and trying to stop this strange operation that they've been sniffing about. And then they end up working not with the president, but with the president's rival. And they feed him information, false information, because the whole thing is fake. So they feed him information saying that the Albanians are going to cooperate with America and they're going to root out the terrorist cells in their country. And all of this is completely made up. But I just thought, given what we've seen during the years of the Trump presidency and how the CIA and other various agencies were going against him, and they would outright disobey him, or they would not very secretly plan to undermine him. And it's just interesting to see how far back this goes, and it's not really anything new. I just thought it was interesting that the CIA characters in this film attempt to thwart the team that's working to save the president's skin. I just think that shows, it goes to show how there's a lot of competing interests sometimes. Sometimes we think there's this unified they, and they are pulling the strings and they know everything. But I think that sometimes they are actually competing amongst themselves for, they're jockeying up the pyramid of power and influence. And then I wanted to also see if you guys remembered this. We were talking about some similarities or some things in real life, 9/11, COVID. But one thing that always stands out, one real life event that always stands out when I think about this movie, is the Saving Private Jessica Lynch. Do you remember this? Does this ring a bell?
I remember that.
Yeah. Vaguely, but just remind us again.
This was a great example of how it's not so much, a Wag the Dog completely falsified, Hollywood produced fake story, but it's an example of how, just like we've seen in Ukraine with, the Ghost of Kiev and all these articles about the female soldiers and all these things and how brave they are. Well, in this case with Jessica Lynch, it was similar in that something happened, and then the powers that be exaggerated it into something that it wasn't. So Jessica Lynch was this female soldier in Iraq. Her vehicle flipped over. She had a broken leg. She got a broken leg and was then captured by Iraqis. Long story short, nothing really bad happened to her. And when she was rescued in a hospital. She had been treated in a hospital. There was no soldiers there. Basically, the American soldiers who went to quote unquote rescue her just walked into an empty hospital and got her. But they filmed it. They made it look like it was this epic rescue mission. They created this story that Jessica Lynch was firing off, to her last round against the bad guys, shooting bad guys dead up to her, down to her last round. That's not true. She never fired a round at all. She was completely immobilized with a broken leg, and I think even a broken back. Claims that she had been brutally tortured and other horrible things. Totally not true. And then a film was made about it where she's this action hero, and I remember during the Iraq War this story splashed all over, and it was such a great, it was another morale boost. Not quite a morale boost because the morale was high. America in this year was not quite the depressed and dystopian and decaying empire that it is now, energy was still high, and there was pushback on the war. There was plenty of protest and plenty of disagreement, but there wasn't so much of a need to get the public on side. A lot of the public was on side because they wanted revenge for 9/11, and they were lied into believing that invading Iraq had something to do with it. And so the Jessica Lynch story wasn't designed necessarily to get the American public on side or boost morale because America had been suffering losses. It was just, I think, another way for them to cement the idea that we're the good guys and we are fighting pure evil. These guys are the bad guys. Look what they did to poor, little blonde girl, Jessica Lynch. But again, just the ability to completely exaggerate, falsify, almost invent out of whole cloth. I mean, it wasn't a staged event. They didn't film this in a studio with actors. She was captured in Iraq. But the way that you can use modern media to craft an entirely different narrative, different reality to what is actually happening. Something that always comes to my mind when I think about this film. And then just because the scene came up, where they find out that the announcement has been made that, oh, the war is over. It's not actually barely even started. Albania is going to cooperate. That, because that happens in the in the recording studio, I just wanted to point out that reminded me of the song that everyone was dancing to during COVID, and how they try to make this theme song for the war with Albania, and it's hyper patriotic, and it's this film is made by left-wing Democrat voting champagne socialists from Hollywood, and so they are satirizing American patriotism. And the lyrics of this song are very corny. It's we will protect our border, we fight for democracy, God bless the USA. And it's making fun of American patriotism, but I just can't help but think that the left itself is totally fine with manipulating these sentiments when it benefits them. I mean, how often do we hear Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Victoria Nuland talk about how we have to defend our democracy, or we have to go fight for Ukraine and defend Ukraine's democracy. We have to defend the rules-based order and all these things. So they have no problem talking about or bigging up American patriotism, American exceptionalism, when it's an opportune moment for them as well. And then, this theme song that they then record and they put out, I just couldn't help but think of all those dancing nurses, dancing police officers to that song Jerusalem during the lockdown. It's just funny how they have multiple layers to the propaganda. And I was telling Btwixt before it went live, this film, could you imagine the resources they would have had at their disposal were this film made in 2007 or 2017, the ability that you have now with social media to make things go viral artificially, to have hashtags and slogans planted everywhere. It's incredible. So I couldn't help but see the similarities with this song they're recording, and then that song that went viral during COVID all over the world.
Yeah, great points there, Pox. I mean, it's incredible. I think also the role of social media added to the actual mainstream itself makes us, as I say, go viral even quicker than it used to. So back in those days, people wouldn't have picked up on a lot of this because a lot of people don't watch the news or read the newspapers. But social media now, everyone's got that phone in their pocket and they're getting their little alerts all the time. Oh, look what's going on here, look what's going on there. And it's news just, it's in your hand right there, as as it's happening. But I just want to bring up this scene in the restaurant where the CIA pull in Breen and his assistant, and a CIA agent Young, and Breen asks him, he says, why do you go to war? He says, I want to protect our way of life. And he said, but would you go to war to do that? And he says, I have. And Breen says, well, I have too. Would you do it again? Isn't that why you're here? I guess so. And if you go to war again, who's it going to be against? Your ability to fight a two-ocean war against who? Sweden and Togo? Who are you sitting here to go to war against? The time has passed. It's past. It's over. The war of the future is nuclear terrorism. It is, and it always will be, against a small group of dissidents who, unbeknownst perhaps to their own governments have blah, blah, blah. And to go to that war, you got to be prepared. You got to be alert, and the public has got to be alert, because that is the war of the future. And if you're not gearing up to fight that war, eventually the axe will fall, and you're going to be out on the street. And you can call this a drill, or you can call it job security, you can call it anything you like. But I got one for you. You said go to war to protect your way of life. Well, Chuck, this is your way of life, isn't it? And if there ain't no war, then you, my friend, can go home and prematurely take up golf, because there ain't no war but ours. And then that kind of scene ends where Breen and his team get back into the limo and carry on. But then things move on from there. So Btwixt, back over to you again.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, they've gone to Plan B, and they've decided that they need a hero. And Pox has already mentioned this woman. I'd never heard about that, actually. I thought it was very interesting. They've decided that they need to come up with a name, and it's very funny because a lot of what they come up with, it involves alcohol and just lounging around, and they're just waiting for someone to come up with a good idea. And the word shoe is mentioned, and then they have this idea: shoemaker, shoeman. And then they have this thing, they could call him good old shoe as well. So there's all this marketing about this hero who doesn't exist. And they get Willie Nelson's character, Johnny Dean, to come up with a song. And you guys have mentioned, the recording studio. You must have like about 50 singers. It reminded me of, do you remember in the 80s, I think it was Band-Aid or something like that. It was like to raise funds for Ethiopia. Like they have this recording studio and you've got like 50 people singing, and it's like, I don't know, it's like gospel, kind of a gospel jingoistic song, and they're all giving it loads. And then suddenly when they find out that, they can't go ahead with it, it's just they cut the song immediately. And they have the funds, they have, I won't say they have the time. They're kind of running out of time because of this presidential election. But yeah, Plan B is they're gonna create this American hero, good old shoe, and we'll get into the marketing that goes behind that. I will mention that they start this campaign as well of once the American public has been made aware that there's this poor guy. And he's stuck, I think he's stuck in Albania. He wants to get home. And he's somehow managed to create dashes like Morse code on his T-shirt. And the message is, what was it? Something mom. What was it?
Courage, mom.
Courage, mom. That's it. Courage, mom. And they immediately start off this campaign of, it kind of reminded me of what was it? The bucket challenge, the ice bucket challenge. You remember that a few years ago? It's suddenly everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it. It's on the news all the time. But in this case, they start throwing shoes with the laces over electric wires on streets, and they throw them over the branches of trees so that everywhere you have shoes dangling. And the idea is they're doing it to support, good old Shoe, who's languishing in Albania, trying to get home to see his mama, And I think there's a basketball match or something, and I don't know, is it like halftime or whatever during some break? All the people on the bleachers they start throwing their shoes onto the court, and you can see Motz. He's talking to Conrad Breen, and he says something like, "I love it, I love it." So Motz, he's a Hollywood producer, and I was thinking he makes movies, and obviously he helps to change how people think, how people act. He helps to change society, to bend society to his will. But I would say it's a slow enough process. But suddenly, now that he's writing the news, he can see how immediate the effects of his writing, his thinking is. And I think when he sees it on TV, all these people throwing their shoes onto the basketball court, he turns to Conrad Breen and he says something like, "I love it. I absolutely love it." So he's really getting into it. And you know that it's going to be very hard for Motz to relinquish his role, because he's being contracted just for a number of days. But you get the feeling that it's going to be very difficult for Motz to let go of this job. And yeah, we'll get into that as well. Just to say as well, Brizer, that, with COVID, and I said this to Pox it's funny, Pox and I, we mentioned it a lot, but we were only speaking for like 2 minutes before we come on. When COVID hit, if you remember, there was it was on all the news channels, it was on all social media. You'd see videos of people in supermarkets stocking up on toilet paper, and it became a sort of a running joke among the masses that, there's a killer virus on the way, but everyone's going to have enough toilet paper. And it was kind of the light part. It was a bit of levity, whatever. And I remember turning on Spanish TV, and there was a talk show. They were all worried about COVID. They were all worried about it reaching Spain, and it was in Italy. The cases were very high in Italy. Cases were very high in Iran. The cases were through the roof in China, and they're all very worried. But then they kind of introduced that little humorous part of the show, and it was a little Spanish boy. He'd bought a present for his father. It was his father's birthday, and his father opened the parcel, and inside it was a roll of toilet paper. So when they were throwing the shoes, over the branches of the trees, over the electric cables, I was thinking of, toilet paper. When you're a young fella, it's quite common that you and a friend will start throwing them over the roofs of houses, bungalows especially, anyway. And you can see how long it is, and it goes way over the house and down the other end. And I was just thinking how easily the media can manipulate the masses to do really stupid things. Yeah,
tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree. Remember that old song from the 70s? That was like, throw your toilet paper or your shoes around, People know it, Sorry, Blackbird, I missed you on the last turn there, so if you want to take your turn now.
Oh, I was just enjoying everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, the tie yellow ribbon, I was just thinking of that. Those insufferable yellow magnetic ribbons and stickers on everything after 9/11. But if you asked any of those people proudly, displaying those totems about building, World Trade Center 7, then they suddenly, didn't want to know about remembering 9/11. That we don't want to remember that version. And the observation of, Americans do not believe anything until they see it on television. That was an old quote from Richard Nixon in the 70s, where he observed the power of the modern media, everyone's addiction to those flickering jukeboxes in their living room, known as television sets or Talmud vision sets, that the American people don't believe anything until they see it on television. And so, this whole thing about this make-believe world of Hollywood that can make you believe anything, can summon you to feel emotions for a hero, or make you hate a villain, or that manipulation of the left hand and the right hand working together to get the crowd in an uproar. And I love the way they developed the characters of the Conrad Breen guy, who is true deep state hidden hand. He knows that he can never take credit for any of the things he does because, no matter how wicked they are, the ends justify the means. He's that amoral, Marxist guy that's just there to fix it. It's not about judging good or bad. It's just, I've got a job to do. I've got a license to kill. I will do anything I need to do to fix this. That is my job. And then you have the Stanley Motts, Hollywood producer that just never got the credit he thought he deserved. And that's one of the things they always shop around these, mongrels that, think they deserve to be, a celebrity and get awards and all this. And also the actress, one of the heroes of this, is the young Albanian girl that's carrying the cat, and they keep changing the cat because of, the president wants it to be a white cat, even though the producer, said it should be a tabby cat or whatever. And during the shoot, she's carrying a bag of Doritos just to position her arm, and then they're going to Photoshop in, the cat later, so just this layer of deception. And when she's going to get paid for the job and asking about, well, how do I register with the union about getting equity points on this? So she's just like, I answered the ad. My agent sent me over here. I did the part. Now can I put this on my resume? And the Conrad Breen character is just cold and serious as a Mossad assassin that, you can never talk about this. And if you do say anything, we will come and we will kill you and we'll kill your family. That's right out of that Talmudic system of whoever disobeys the rabbis deserves death and will be punished by being boiled in hot excrement in hell, right? So the worst thing you can do is go against these authority figures that say, we're at war, you got to do this, and if you don't do this, I have the right to kill you in the most heinous of ways, right? So this is that system, and the observation of, all of these alphabet agencies basically blossomed at the same time in the wake of the World Zionist movement and, the post-Freemason movement. And this idea of these hidden hand power systems that aren't elected, aren't accountable, aren't being pursued by the legal authorities. They have immunity so it's this literal East of Eden, land of Nod shadow world that these people existed. I love the part where the CIA knows that there's not really a war in Albania. And so they basically take the executive branch guys, we know you're working for the executive branch, the president. We know there's no war. What's going on? Right. And they're deciding whether or not to kill these people right away. But, the pill pull abilities of the Conrad Breen guy, he basically sells it to the CIA that it's in their interest to go along with this. And all I could think about was, being backstage at 9/11 and all those best of the best, our best and brightest, all going along with the big lie of 9/11, even though in their heart of hearts, they knew, if they were my students, that it was physically impossible, right? But they were going along with it. And, you had the heroes of the 51 intelligence professionals that signed off on the Hunter laptop, including my old client, Mr. NSA himself, General Michael Hayden. So these, intelligence agencies, are like witch hunters. If you pay somebody to find witches, they will find witches. Once they are created, their entire reason for being is for survival, to keep those grant monies coming in, keep the system relevant, right? And so this whole idea of, these backdoor deals between the CIA and the hidden hands of Hollywood, making these deals all about manipulating people into things like wars. And they're just like, this is just business, and so this complete no compassion for the people that are getting killed, that, you're violating the thou shalt not bear false witness law, these kind of things. But then the idea of the heroes you were talking about, United 93, Hollywood had to make the movie about the Let's Roll heroes of United 93, a total fabricated story, physically impossible, but yet everybody, went to see it. They make school children watch it as this is reality. And of course, you talked about the yellow ribbons, and my favorites, those were those pizza boxes. You could not buy a pizza in the United States for the 10 years after 9/11 without the Twin Towers being on it in blood saying, remember 9/11. But again, if you ask the pizza people if they want to talk about magic cell phone calls and World Trade Center 7, they had nothing to say to you. Anyway, so those are just some of my observations there. Back to you.
Yeah, some good points there too, Frederick. Just going back to that, the Albanian girl, in that little movie clip there, and she's holding that bag of Doritos, and they just Photoshop in the cat. And again, it's to bring out that kind of emotional response from people, oh, there's a poor girl in this awful terrorist country, run by lunatics, and she's trying to escape with her cat. It just, people see that, and it brings out that emotional response, and it's like, yeah, go USA, we go get these guys, and also going back to the Schumann character and the shoe, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Ole Damagar. He's a Danish guy who looks into a lot of these events that we've been told has happened, like shootings and bombings and whatever, and he's asking the question, are they actually real, or is this a big movie script? And he looks, is that fake blood? Are they rubber bodies? Or, he looks for all the little discrepancies. And I think he does make some good points in a lot of them. Now, whether it's true or not, we don't know. We're not there and he's not there. But he says, well, always one thing, is this what struck me about the shoe? Because one thing that Ole Darmagar talks about is if you always look at the photographs or a video of the aftermath of, say, a bombing, you'll always see one shoe stuck there in the middle of all the carnage, and maybe a teddy bear or something beside it, And again, it's when people see that, they say, oh, that's a poor child owned that shoe. And the poor child's probably been blown up and everything, that these nasty people, look what they've done. And it brings out that emotional response. And it always works so well. We saw it again during the scamdemic about protecting Granny. We got to keep the young, the really young children safe. We have to keep you safe and secure, all of this type of stuff. So you have to stay indoors. Don't go outside. Don't be going and you're just going to have to talk to Granny on the phone, or maybe you can knock on the window and wave to her from outside, but you can't go in because we all have to stay safe. And it's all this emotional stuff that they bring out, which, that's where when people stop thinking rationally, once emotion takes over, and they do this time and time again with these kind of events. So even if they're real, they can, they want to always take opportunity out of a crisis. Who said that? That was Rahm Emanuel, who worked with Obama, and it's so true. If there's an opportunity there, if there's a so-called crisis here, let's take full opportunity, bring in the movie guys, and let's create a big story and sell it. And let's throw in some nice songs, to raise the spirits and all the rest of it. And we'll go and fight this terrible thing. And then we have to ask the question, well, what are we actually fighting? What is there? Is it all fake? Or what the hell are we dealing with here? So, okay. Btwixt, you want to go again, or Pox Populi? I kind of missed turns there. So, whoever wants to go. Btwixt, go ahead. We'll keep it back. Get it back in order again.
All right. Yeah. No, you mentioned the idea of the shoe there, and it's left at the middle of some terrible scene. I was just thinking there, the shortest story, I heard this many years ago, the shortest story ever written was by Ernest Hemingway. And it goes something like, for sale, baby shoes, never worn. And, with those 6 words, you can conjure up all sorts of emotions. It's very powerful, just 6 words, and you can create a story. Obviously you have to fill in the blanks yourself, but yeah, you mentioned Obama as well. Like, I remember around the time that they allegedly captured bin Laden, and I can't remember, was it 6 Marines had managed to kill him, and like a few months later, or maybe it was a year later, those 6 Marines all died in a helicopter accident. And it's like they create heroes, and then the heroes just disappear, like they're no longer useful. And even Osama bin Laden, like we heard about him for, must have been from 2001. Like, that's the first time I heard of him. Obviously he'd been known well before that, but I first heard about him the day of 9/11, more or less, until what was it, like 2015, 2016. So let's say for a decade and a half, every day of the week you were hearing about this guy bin Laden. Every so often videos were coming out. They finally managed to kill him, and you'd think they'd parade the body, or they'd take a photo of the face or something, but no, nothing to see here, guys. We dumped his body in the ocean. So like in this movie, we'll be coming to it with good old Shu himself. Eventually he's no longer needed for the narrative, and they can make something happen there. You mentioned as well the part where what's it, Kirsten Dunst, she plays Tracy Lime, and she thinks this is her big break, this little performance, where she's pretending to be an Albanian girl running through a village that's bombed out with, cradling a cat. I thought it was very funny that, when Motz is there, he's looking for a cat. He wants a kitten. Kittens are cuter than cats, and someone has brought him a Lhasa Apso, and he's going absolutely mental. I don't want a Lhasa Apso. I want a kitten. I thought that was quite funny. It's that kind of artistic temperament. Yeah, but that's all I have to say for now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's and again, Blackbird brought it up there about when she says, "Oh well, can I put this on my resume because it could be my big break and everything," and Breen just says, "No, is it? We'll just come around, just straight to her face. We'll come around and we'll kill you and your family. So just get on with the job, And then that makes you wonder about a lot of the doctors and the nurses and everything that were involved in this whole scam. Is that the same thing that happened to them? Were they brought in and made to sign the contract with the devil? And as we get to the end of the movie, we'll see that another situation like that happens. So I'll pass over to Pox now for more of his thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to say. Just mainly thoughts on the film itself as a piece of cinema. I think it kind of wobbles a bit off the rails in the final act. I mean, they survive a plane crash and no one gets a scratch, except unfortunately I think the poor pilots don't make it, but no one seems to mind. And then the army convict that they've dug up to play good old Shu, he meets his demise because he can't resist his criminal urges, and so that just kind of is a very easy wrap up of his character. And so the final act it really just hammers home that all three of the main protagonists, De Niro, Hoffman, and Hesch's characters, they kind of reminded me of the Seinfeld cast. They're just entirely self-centered, unscrupulous, immoral or amoral, and they don't really care what happens to other people, which was it was the defining characteristics for certainly Seinfeld, Elaine, and George Costanza, maybe not Kramer, I suppose. And they kind of showed that in the series finale of Seinfeld when they get put on trial for all their indifference, all their apathy, all the nasty things they have done to various characters throughout the series. A finale which most people did not really like, but anyway, there's neither here nor there. But I just couldn't help seeing these characters for what they are in the final act. And then, of course, it's even more amplified when De Niro has to. It only takes him about 10 seconds to make the decision. When Dustin Hoffman's character is, again, the film is short. It's only 95 minutes long or something like that, and there's no filler. There's no unnecessary scenes. The story wants to show us how Hoffman's character becomes jaded, and he wants the credit, he wants the fame, and there isn't any need for massive scenes of exposition. We get a few hints and some dialogue between him and De Niro, where he's talking about how this will be the greatest story we ever tell. And De Niro has to tell him, you can't tell this story to anyone. And he says, well, yeah, not right now, but eventually, we will tell this story. So there's a bit of, foreshadowing. But when the penny drops, it happens very quickly. He sees on a sort of public television chat show that the president's likely to win the election. He's surging ahead in the polls, and it's all thanks to his ad campaign of "Don't change horses in midstream," which is so bland and boring. And Hoffman's character has hated this ad campaign the entire film. And they flash a telephone number on the screen to take in viewer calls, and he starts writing down the phone number immediately and says, "I'm going to call them. I'm going to put them right." That horrible ad campaign isn't the reason why the president is pulling ahead in the polls. It's because of me. And De Niro has to tell him, you can't do that. You can never tell anyone that what we've done. And then, it happens all very quickly. The film is ending, and within about 10 seconds, De Niro makes the decision. He nods to the secret agents standing near the door. Yeah, just take care of him. So these people are very, very unscrupulous, and you kind of see that really play out in the final act.
Yeah, and just to kind of rewind a little bit, the Schumann character, what they have to do is, because he's this American hero caught behind enemy lines, so they fake a rescue, and they want to bring him back, and there's going to be a big ceremony for him, and he's going to get a Medal of Honor or whatever. But of course, the plane crashes, and you say that was this. They got a little bit silly there because the plane crashed and nobody got hurt, but they rearranged the thing anyway. Some farmer rescues them or gives them a place to stay for a bit. Old Schumann then sees the farmer's daughter and decides he wants to get his wicked way with her, and chases her into a shed. The farmer follows, kills Schumann, and then the guys are going, "Oh Jesus, right, okay, we gotta do something here about this." And so yeah, we can easily write them out of the script. And as you say, they fake their the plane landing in Washington, wherever, and the guy's in a coffin with the flag on it, and there's a big ceremony, and the great American hero, and isn't it wonderful? And it all finishes well, and again, Mott's, of course, he wants the credit. I want the credit. Us producers, we don't get any credit. All the actors and everything, they all get the credit and the nominations. I don't get anything. So makes lots of money, but he wants the credit. It's the ego, as you said, coming out there. And De Niro says, "Oh, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. No, forget about the credit. Listen, come on, that's it. The show's over." He says, "No, I want the goddamn credit." So he walks out the door and, as you said, gives the nod. And the next thing is we hear that well-known Stanley Mott's movie producer in Hollywood met an untimely death, had a massive heart attack while out sunbathing outside by his pool or something. Again, how many times do we hear about that? Someone committing suicide by shooting, 3 bullets into their heads, one after the other. I mean, that's crazy stuff. But they just kind of get away with it. Nobody thinks about it. And you're right about this unscrupulous nature of these people. I mean, Btwixt, we were talking, we did the review of Margin Call last week, where it was set in this investment firm in 2008, just before the financial collapse. And it was like, save the corporation, save the company, no matter what. forget about what happens to the economy and to the people who are going to be destroyed, but our lives destroyed by this. We got to save the company by any means. And the same thing in this one as well, where we've got to save the system, the establishment, that the political system has to remain. We don't care who we take out, what collateral damage is done. The system has to remain in place, and we'll do anything. We'll pull out all stops to have it done. And that's how they work. In the media, in banking, in government, they don't care as long as their system stays in place. So, Frederick, over to you for your on your thoughts on towards the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah, great observations there. And yes, this group is just amoral. They are going to do whatever benefits them and their agenda. And with that pill pull mindset, one day they could be saying one thing and the next day something the complete opposite, but that's still fitting their agenda. And the observation of never letting a good crisis go to waste, that was the motto of Rahm Emanuel, who was President Obama's handler. And he served in the Israeli military, not the U.S. military, interesting fact. But going back to the Schumann story and that idea of the power of suggestion, where they just randomly go through, a database of names that they can pick from. They pick Schumann, come up with this, archetype of this totem of the shoe. And then you see the Willie Nelson character writing a song of an early American folk ballad type of song with a black guy. They actually record it all scratchy, put it on a 78, so they completely fabricate a piece of historical evidence, slip it into the Library of Congress. And then you see a scene and you're not quite sure if the woman is a prostitute having sex or if this is just her lover or she's actually in a relationship, but she is the operative to, after sex with the guy who works at the Library of Congress, plant the suggestion of, wasn't there an old song about shoe? And of course he goes and voila, he finds this old 78 wax pressing of it, and that immediately becomes the big hit about shoe. And then the reality is, Shu turns out to be this prisoner, just a convict that's completely insane, homicidal, non-functioning personality, was delivered in shackles with big things of medicine. And it's like he's fine until his medicine runs out. And he's literally killed raping the farmer's daughter, and the other thing is the pilots, the white guy pilots that are, given the reality of, well, we're going to fly into a storm and it's pretty dicey. It will probably crash, the reality. And they make the decision that we've got to go get there. We got to risk it, and so the pilots dutifully follow orders. And miraculously, they're the only ones who die in the crash. The other people all survive and could care less about the pilots. They're just like, okay, what do we do next? What's the next move? It's always about the next move. And they're rescued by an illegal alien on a tractor. And that's an issue because, they have to be rescued by a U.S. citizen. So they immediately give this guy citizenship so they can change the story to say, he was a patriotic American rescuing them after the plane crash. And then, of course, the thing that, he died a hero's death rather than he was killed because he was raping a farmer's daughter. And the funeral is, of course, all the pomp and circumstance with the flag, and the finishing touch was his faithful dog following the coffin to get everybody's emotional, just completely out of the reality of who this person was. And the flash forward, nobody had ever heard of the villain Osama bin Laden and the nebulous gang, Al-Qaeda, until the USS Cole bombing of 12 October 2000. that was used to sell the idea of, radical Islam, Osama bin Laden, and Al Qaeda. They've got sights on America. And the FBI agent who was investigating was a guy named John P. O'Neill. And he was like, this is Mossad. Mossad is setting up Arabs to do. They love to do this. The King David bombing, the Lavon affair, the USS Liberty. It's kind of their false flag thing, right? And he's saying this is another Mossad false flag. He's thwarted by the deep state, the U.S. State Department, all the Jews in the U.S. State Department saying, no, this was Al Qaeda. This was Osama bin Laden. Get with the script. And it just so happens he got hired on 9/11, his first day at work, and he died in the explosion of the towers. He was hired by the people that instigated 9/11, because he was the authority on the Middle East and all the power players there. That was his specialty, and they took him out and of course made him a hero. And that's one of the things about this Maccabee mindset is, they feel really bad when they have to kill one of their own, collateral damage, so they'll put a monument to them. They'll make a movie about them, right? Make them a hero, but they're the ones who murder them because they're in the way of the agenda, or they need a sacrifice to sell the agenda, and this is how they operate it. So back to you.
Yeah, that's it. And the end of the film I thought was good because it's, again, when you look at all these people who signed up for all of this, the whole story was a complete fabrication, and they had to have complete secrecy, and you literally had to sign a deal with the devil here. And I'm wondering how many contracts have been signed by people through all these events that we've seen, false flags, or whether they're real or fake or whatever, just to kind of get their high-profile jobs and whatever, and keep their standard of living going. It's either that's what you have, that's your choice. You can have a really great life, or you're dead and your family's dead. So it's up to you. And most people will sign that piece of paper. And that's what happened with old Motz at the end. He signed the contract, and that's what I would say to people: be careful what contracts you sign, because read that small print, because they say the large print giveth and the small print taketh away, and that's what happens here. So we'll just go on to Btwixt, your final thoughts towards the end of the film.
Yeah, you knew it was on the cards that Motz was on borrowed time, and when I watched it the second time, I couldn't remember the very ending. I couldn't remember it, but I was thinking as I was watching it, even if Motz keeps his lips sealed, will he survive? Because he's a witness to this whole thing. Even if he doesn't tell anyone, from the whatever Secret Service's perspective, he's a liability. They should just get rid of him. So even if he wasn't going to blab about it, I got the feeling that they would eventually just get rid of him. And even that Kirsten Dunst's character, Tracy Lime, I just can't imagine. She's really a nobody. She's just kind of starting out in acting. I just can't imagine them keeping her alive. But yeah, just to get back, you mentioned the crash. A little bit of humor here, but I was going. You guys were very confused at how the plane could be practically disintegrated. The pilots are dead, but yet Motz and Breen and Hesch's character Amos, that they all survive. I was going to say maybe they were made out of passports. Yeah, mentioning as well Amos's character. I really find these kinds of women to be unattractive. That this ambitious career woman, it's like watching a witch. When I watch this movie and you're watching her, she's completely obsessed with her job, and it's just horrible. Anyway, you've already mentioned, the Willie Nelson duet with the black guy, and they come up with this song, "Good Old Shoe," and there's that part where Breen is listening to it, and he says to someone, "Can we kind of give it a scratchy sound?" And I was thinking, I remember when I watched it the first time, I was thinking, no, they're not gonna. And then you find out that they put the recording into the, what is it called, the Library of Congress or something, and they put it under folk music 1930. And I was thinking completely Orwellian, they're creating a past that never was. And this comes, when I was watching this, I was thinking of what's been, on the news, I would say, on alternative media lately, the whole AI thing, and this Gemini or whatever from Google, that people are perplexed that when they try and get AI to create George Washington, they get this African American with a white wig, and they can't understand it. And but this has been the way of Google for years. And I remember years back making a video where I tried to search for white couples, white man, white woman, Caucasian man, Caucasian woman, and you just couldn't get it. So obviously the AI is going to follow suit, and there is this sense of white erasure. And if you go to a shopping center, like all the shops, all the models, you might find a white woman, but you will not find a white man anywhere, and it creates this sense of us being obsolete. And there was even I saw it on Twitter there recently, I think it was the Czech Republic, they're saying it's 99% white, but the ads are coming out now for sports stuff and all that, even local businesses, and the models are blacks. So it's just interesting that they can go back in time. And I was thinking of Orwell. I recently reread Animal Farm, and as you know, they have these commandments, and the pigs over time they start changing the commandments, and then they tell the sheep and the idiots, the other animals, that, oh no, it was always like this, but we know that they're changing the rules as they go along. And then with 1984, we were always at war with Eurasia, or we were always at war with East Asia. So this thing of going back and changing the past, I think it troubles us because, as Europeans, we do like to study things from their foundations. We do like a sense of chronology, and we don't like the idea of people meddling, with the past and mixing things up. And then we can't, we're kind of a bit autistic. We need to try and connect dots, and then the dots are everywhere. So, when I saw this in the movie where they put the CD, so it's official, it's official. If any, American citizen in this movie would do a search on that record, it will come up that, it's been, this song has been in existence for 57 years, give or take, or 67 years, sorry. That's what they're going to find, even though it was only created, 24 hours ago. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, good observation there. Creating that song "Old Shoe" and saying that this is an old 30s black folk music song, and rearranging it, putting the scratchy sound in, and putting out the old 78, and then putting it out there in a song, of course, never even existed, And talking about Orwell, of course, his famous quote is, "Who controls the the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." And that's exactly what we saw here.
I meant to say as well, Brizer, sorry, to say as well that, and Pox has kind of alluded to it, that in 1997, you have the idea that Breen, he has to travel, physically, he has to travel to California, he has to travel to Hollywood, he has to go around the country doing this and doing that. With AI now, they could just have, they wouldn't need much manpower. Handful of people in a room working on computers, and they could create this type of thing. So it shows you how the film is outdated in a way. We have the same sinister narratives, but the technology has certainly changed.
Yeah, that's it. It's amazing how the technology has moved things on to such an extent now, where, as I said earlier, that it's just in our face all the time now because of social media. You know, everything's there. You just have to touch of your finger. You can just get all the information you want. You know. So I suppose what we'll do is we kind of got to the end of the movie. We're just going to go around the table a bit and discuss what you think the implications of all this and where we are now. So will I hand over to you, Pox, for that? What's your final thoughts on it, and then kind of comparing that to where we are actually now, and well, you know, things that we can learn from this, because I think there's so many things in here that we can kind of go, wow, you know, because you know we hear from a lot of people that, you know, Hollywood and our so-called controllers like to tell us in advance what they're doing, but they hide it. And it's kind of us to figure it out. And, you know, I think we're kind of doing that now. A lot of people are waking up. I'm seeing that more often, certainly compared to a few years ago. So, Pox, yeah, over to you.
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, the film satirizes a great deal of American society really well. You know, apart from that final act with the plane crashing and then a very quick resolution of the story, for the most part, the film is very well made, and it does present some very challenging and uncomfortable concepts. And there's a character that I don't think we've spoken about, the Fad King, played by Dennis Leary, in the way that he's employed. He's phoned up by Hoffman's character, and his job is to make like product placement. His job is to make you know, things, purchasable items connected to this this production, this fake war. And so, for like, one example was when Robert De Niro is telling him about the war hero character that they're going to invent. The Fad King says something about, okay, well, this guy, he's a prisoner. He's been behind enemy lines. He's ripped up Morse code on his jumper so they can communicate to his mother. What's he been eating? And De Niro says, I don't know. He wrangled up snakes and rats, and I don't know. He said, no. He was eating military-issued hamburgers that you pull a string and they self-heat inside of a bag. Now we're going to sell those at Burger King and McDonald's. The Schumann burger or something like that. He calls it that. This is a very good parody of the consumerist, capitalist American society. And I remember it being very off-putting during COVID when you'd see all these masks with everyone started having their own Teespring or whatever it's called website where they're selling masks with your favorite football club's logo on it. Every football club started having their own masks. It was just ridiculous. It was like designer face masks now. You get your own with express your personality on your face mask. And it was just another way to make money for some people. So I think that was another very good and insightful addition to the story. Implications, I guess, yeah. It's a film that teaches you to be very wary of what you see. Like I said at the outset, I just find it incredibly ironic that I would probably trust the account of Tacitus or Herodotus or some medieval scribe from the 13th century writing about a battle than I would trust images and pictures and viral videos that you would assume would be more trustful. Look, it's photographic evidence. We can see with our own eyes. We don't have to take the word of some scribe, 700 years ago. Well, maybe not so fast, actually, because we know that the Soviets created staged photos in the Second World War. We know that they went into concentration camps, and then they brought in a film crew to stage photos, and they didn't actually rescue anyone first. They brought in the film crews first. And then there's allegations that Zelensky has been recording in in a studio in front of a green screen. He wasn't actually in some square in Kiev or whatever. He was in a studio filming this address to the world. So yeah, and then I guess along with that though, there's like what Btwixt was talking about with AI. We have to be careful that we don't go overboard with this caution and start believing that everything is fake and that nothing is real. And this is going to be a severe problem, I think, going forward. It'll be a genuine quest to discern what is authentic and to find and to have a bit of authenticity in your life. There's going to be so much. I mean, it's already happening. It's been this way, and this film shows that it's been this way for quite a few decades now. But I think with social media, with AI, and more to come, it's going to be very easy to become demoralized and just think that everything is fake and nothing is real. And I think when you have a population like that, like you said earlier, that's confused and they don't know exactly what's going on, nothing good can come of that. Well, nothing good for the population, that is. But it could be very good for the people pulling the strings, people behind the curtain. So I think, getting into conspiracy research, it's useful. It's always good to have doubts. It's always good to question. But I do sometimes worry that there's a segment of conspiracy researchers that gets into like Q territory and worse, and says that everything is a psyop, everything is fake. And I think that is also something to be careful about. Things do happen in life, and there may be ulterior motives, or events may be latched onto by amoral, unscrupulous people who then use those events to their benefit. But things do happen, and there are things in life that are worth fighting for, and there are things in life that are worth standing up for. And I think it's worth guarding against a sort of demoralized apathy that could become a result of so much fakery. So just something to be on guard for.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I say I've been looking at stuff for quite a while now, and I have questioned, whether these things are true or not, whether these are fake, crisis actors, fake blood, fake bodies, stuff like that. But then again, I'm also saying, well, this could also be real, so we got to be kind of very careful here how we look at this. And I think at least questioning the narrative is good, because it's healthy debate. I think sometimes people say, oh, if you think it's all fake, it's a shill. And well, if you think it's all real, well, what's, you're captured there as well, aren't you? Because I would say probably a lot of it is not real. A lot of it is kind of staged, but there's a storyline around it, and maybe there are real events happening, and they're just built upon that story, and as it created that, took that opportunity out of that crisis to build on it and push it forward, So yeah, we got to be careful and use discernment and not get too carried away either side, but just keep questioning the narrative. And the more we question things, the more things maybe become unraveled, and we will, I suppose, find what we think is which we would think is the real truth. I think the whole thing, what is truth? I think for me, it's like what you can see, but your 5 sense reality, what you can, that's the expression of truth, isn't it? What you sense in the 5 senses, that's what your brain takes in, and it forms this reality for you. But you still have to kind of question what is this reality we're living in. And sometimes you've got to maybe not let this stuff get to you either way. Just get on with your life, do the best you can, and not get caught up in different narratives, and just follow your heart, your own soul, or your own gut instinct, and continue questioning, continue asking questions, get people to look at different things, and not to take everything at face value, because there are a lot of false prophets out there, and we have to be careful of that. So Blackbird, you know a lot about this as well. So what's your take on all of that?
Oh, well, first off, thank you so much for having me on. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. This has been quite the great way to spend a Sunday afternoon. And yes, we have to be on guard of that, everything's fake trap. And, I always talk about things being organic or synthetic. And even the organic, though, the hidden hand, dark, bad actors will seize upon it to try to use it to their benefit. So, that's part of the thing. But always remember the cultural Marxist end game on critical theory. It wasn't to ever try to establish what is true. It was to exhaust the reasoning skills of the white European scientific method to a point of just shutting you down. If you're constantly bombarded with conflicting data, then you shut down. And this was that diabolical research of Pavlov's other experiments. Everybody knows about Pavlov and the bell and the salivating dogs, but they never tell you about the more diabolical experiment of the circle and the ellipse, where he would take normal, healthy, loving dogs and drive them insane by never laying a hand on them, just by putting them in a situation where they never knew what the right answer was. And they would go insane because they were trying so hard to please the authority figure. And the idea of the influencer, yes, the Dennis Leary character, this is our models, this is our celebrities, these are our spokespeople, and this was what the MK Ultra program was all about. Excuse me, the MK, the COINTEL, Mockingbird, excuse me. The Mockingbird program was all about was, paying or blackmailing all these influencers to talk the script. It's like you're free to tell, what you normally do, except when you get the call. It's like the scene in the movie where the guy's getting his, script through his earpiece, and this is now the official story. And that's how they work. It's like everything's normal until it's not. And one of the big architects of the big lie of 9/11 from the executive branch was Karl Rove, aka Turd Blossom, as he was known by President W. And his big quote on this was, "We're an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality. And while you're studying that reality, judiciously as you will, we'll act again, creating other new realities, which you can study too, and that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you, all of you, will be left to just study what we do." And this, is right out of the Marxist dogma of, Marx said, the historians only recorded history. The point is to change it, that tikkun olam, we're fixing the world. So this is the mindset of these people is, they have this zealotry that they are in the right and everybody else is just in the way, right? And they're building their new world order. And I go back to the influencers during 9/11, like Rita Katz and her sight memory. So here you have this little, Jewish supremacist woman tied in with Israeli intelligence, fabricating, cooking intelligence, and everything she released was immediately picked up by all the worldwide news outlets, especially here in the States. It's like, oh, Rita Katz sight memory. It's basically a woman working out of her apartment with her cats, right? But she's the most trusted name in intelligence. And so she was the one, defining the whole narrative. And then you had Judas Goats like Reverend John Hagee of the Christians United for Israel. And, people don't know that, Christians United for Israel was started in the 70s, but went defunct. But after 9/11 was rebooted by David Bragg, who just happens to be Ehud Barak's cousin. And Ehud Barak was in Unit 269. He was prime minister. And so they basically created this Hasbro fifth column in the United States, got John Hagee to be the front guy. And it was all about, if you're a Christian, you have to support Israel and fight against all these evil 9/11 truthers that dare, challenge the official narrative. And it was very effective propaganda. And of course, all the atrocity propaganda, that is what the bread and butter of wars is, the atrocity propaganda, that you can demonize the enemy. And I guess my final thoughts is just going back to this idea of, we have been studied by these people, and now they have launched their campaign against us. They're playing the long game. But in 1898, H.G. Wells wrote War of the Worlds, and his first lines was, no one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man. Right. And this was his symbolism of world Zionism, world communism, as the Martian invaders, that intransigent adversary that just wanted you dead and as a food source. Right. And then, the things that I always tell people, that study, when you look at what they were doing, we talked about the Pavlov experiments with the circle and the ellipse, that formed the beat generation. You don't know what the truth is. You're constantly being told bad dog. Stanley Milgram's defer to authority experiments. Solomon Asch group conformity experiments. Martin Siegelman, the learned helplessness experiments. Philip Zimbardo with the Stanford prison experiments, otherwise known as the Lucifer experiment, and of course Jane Elliott with her blue eyes, brown eyes study. And you can see, once you learn those various studies that they made on the Goyim, these were all Jewish supremacists, that making their career studying the Gentiles and weaponizing this, fifth generation warfare against us. And you can just see all of that science in this science of propaganda and war atrocity propaganda, and coming out of Hollywood as entertainment. And I always tell people I would put this film in the middle between the 1986 film Riders of the Storm, that was re-released as The American Way with Dennis Hopper and Michael Pollard, then 1997 Wag the Dog, and then 2006 Idiocracy. So watch those three movies back to back, and then think about all of this science of the various conformities, etc., and see if you don't see some patterns. But thanks again for having me today.
Yeah, good points there, Blackbird. Thanks. It just came to me as well when you were talking about the Stanley Mott's character Dustin Hoffman played, and that whether he went along with the whole show and didn't want the credit, really, he was well looked after for playing his part in all of this. Could they trust him afterwards? And it just reminded me of Stanley Kubrick, who made a lot of movies about, what is our reality, what's going on here, and certainly it's like dystopian type movies and whatever. And of course, then he made Eyes Wide Shut, and then a couple of weeks later, or a month, I don't know how long it was after. It wasn't too long afterwards, anyway. He died suddenly, and did he kind of go too far with that movie? Well, we heard that there was some scenes were edited out of it, so. But that was another interesting movie that we should probably look at as well, review. But yeah, again, I think it's well worth a watch, considering it was made 25 years ago, and then watch what's happened since, and look at all the different things that have happened. So the scamdemic, the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. Now we have the whole Israel-Gaza thing going on as well, where we've been told that Hamas came in and abducted all these women and cut pregnant babies out of their stomachs and put them in ovens, burnt them in ovens, and all this nonsense, mass rapes and stuff. And that's been thoroughly debunked, even though it's still out there, it's still being pushed relentlessly. I see it on Twitter, I'm sure you guys have seen it too, just Israeli trolls everywhere, all over Twitter, and that doesn't surprise me considering that Elon Musk went over and visited old Bibi there in Israel. So, you know, they really are pushing things, and I think they also realize that people are questioning things now. They're looking into stuff. So going back to the kind of the fakery stuff, and I've put this out to some people, that the videos that people think are fake and are not real, who made those videos? Is that another level of fakery? That they could be faked. So you could have two stages here, like on stage one, they put out what looks, which is possibly a drill, which looks very fake because it looks, you know, this type of thing would not happen in a situation like that. You know, everything's out of place, out of sync, and then people go, "Oh, look, it's all fake." But then over on stage two, people are maybe being killed, and or quite possibly being killed, and and that kind of adds to this confusion. And you know, Pox rightly said, you know, it's kind of trying to balance between what is real, what is staged, what is choreographed, what's put out there, and trying to work it out, and not get pulled in either way. You know, the official, you know, when you look at a lot of events, the mainstream media will say, "Oh, this is definitely real," and then when you question it, you're just some crazy conspiracy nut, and just shut up. But more and more people are doing it now. People are certainly questioning the scamdemic, and people are certainly questioning the whole Gaza thing as well, as to what the Jews in Israel are doing. Like, you know, what they're falling out of favor now. But then, is that another psyop that's been layered into this as well, to bring down the state of Israel? Because didn't Henry Kissinger say it about 12 years ago that the state of Israel would not exist? So is that fomenting a kind of a Middle Eastern war where the Jews of Israel will move now to Ukraine and set up their new Jerusalem over there? So there's all sorts of layers here, and we have to be very, very careful now in this age of this information war that we're in, and trying to discern what is real and what is totally staged and fake, because there's a bit of both in all of it. Well, you know, it's either one or the other, and we have to make a very considered judgment here. And I suppose sitting on the fence would be one thing, but I don't think that's the right term, but to be certainly questioning everything about what these assholes are doing, because they're certainly playing with our minds here, and it's very hard to know exactly what's happening. But I think once we question things, we can kind of remain kind of sane, and we don't kind of get confused and lash out at things, and we need to remain focused. And I think that's the way forward, because more and more people, I think, are waking up, but they just need a more direction. And it just shows you how powerful the media is. I'd like to put that out there to the rest of you. How powerful is the media here? Because I think they're the main players here, because they can create any story they want and get all the politicians, all the bankers, all the players involved, and push out a story, and people will buy it. And I think once people move away from that media, and even also to look at social media as well, okay, there might be a lot of truth there that people are putting out, but you know, there's also the other side as well. It's the opposite, you know, and it's trying to. You need to ask questions. Why do you say that? What gives you the reason for that? And get people's minds thinking instead of just following whatever narrative that suits their purposes. So Btwixt, over to you. Or where we go with this? Yeah, final thoughts, Btwixt, and we'll wrap this up then.
Sure. Yeah, just a few things I'd like to mention. So this film, like, you get the sense when you're watching it that from start to finish, it's Stuper's delight. That, you know, someone or some people out there are having a great laugh at our expense. And there's no better actor for the smirk than Robert De Niro. So if you go back to 97, I think, I could be wrong, but I think this would have been considered a highbrow film, because when it starts, you don't really know what the hell is going on. Like, they hit the ground running. There's no real introduction. And, you know, some people might have watched it and thought, aha, hilarious. They're making things up. But, you know, the full weight of the film probably passed them by. You know, there are layers to films, and there are many layers to this film. And last year, you and I and Ogner and Pox, we did a review of The Truman Show. And that was another example. So I think occasionally there are people out there who want to send a message to, let's say, the more discerning portions of the population. They want to send out a little message to us. And this film is certainly one that sends out a message. Now, whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. I just get the feeling people, I can't say obviously definitively, but watching it, I got the sense that the joke's on me. The joke's on me, and the joke's on people I know. We're the idiots. And there are people who just make up things on the fly, and we turn these things into a sort of dogma, into a religion, and we start genuflecting in front of it. So yeah, there's that. Now, I want to get back to the Gulf War, the first Gulf War. Like, I was a young child when that war broke out. And I remember in primary school, a boy who was a year older than me, there were a few other boys there at the time. And I remember he said to me, do you know what you get if you spell Saddam backwards? And I said, I don't know, Madis. And he was like, mad ass. And at the time, I just thought it's a bit strange how in rural Ireland, you know, early 1990s, a boy could have an opinion about Saddam Hussein. And as I got older then, I started thinking about it a bit more, and I thought that's the power of the American media, which is now global. It's global. You know, the American media is the global media. And then we have to go back to World War II, and you look into this guy, Bernays. I never knew. When I thought of the United States, I always thought it was populated predominantly by people of English stock. Obviously, I knew there was a large Irish contingent. I knew you had a large Italian contingent. I knew there were Poles, and then there were some other nationalities, but I thought it was mostly English. And then I discovered that no, actually, the majority of the European stock of the United States were Germans. And then I thought, how the hell did America get into a war with Germany, especially in World War II? And then I discovered this guy, Bernays. You know, he was the Conrad Breen of his time. He was the Mr. Fix-It. He could change public opinion by going on a massive campaign and making out that Germans were committing the worst atrocities possible, that Germans were really orcs. They weren't people. They didn't have a beating heart. They didn't have blood. They were some sort of alien monsters, Starship Troopers, whatever. And then I remember, it must be about 20 years ago, a friend of mine, I was visiting him, and I got speaking to his father, and his father had been on a pilgrimage to some part of former Yugoslavia. And he immediately started telling me about what the Serbs had, the atrocities the Serbs had committed. And he mentioned, the Serbs, they were terrible, he said, for cutting babies out of wombs when the woman was still alive and killing both a baby and woman. And this was what was in his head. And this has been in the head of many people throughout the decades, that certain nationalities, certain ethnic groups, certain races in a specific period of time commit the most heinous of crimes, and therefore we must wipe them out. We must bomb them into oblivion, which happened to Serbia. So there's that. And these are the same people, the same people who would utter such atrocities and wail over them. They're the same people who most likely have very liberal stances on abortion. Anne Heche starred in this film, and I was trying to jog my memory. I said, that name's familiar to me, Anne Heche. Now, you guys can let me know before we finish off this recording, but is that the woman who, she died in a car accident? The car set on fire or something. She was in a body bag, and there was some helicopter or something, or there was someone upstairs in a house recording, and there's like an image of her. There's like it's very short piece of footage where she manages to, I don't know, rip open the body bag and sit up for a minute, and the paramedics are like, she's got loads of paramedics around her, and they kind of wheel her into the back of an ambulance, or I don't know, and then she dies. We're told she dies shortly after. I'm just curious about that, but we'll get to that anyway towards the end.
Yeah, Btwixt, you're right on that. Yeah, I
right,
remember hearing
right.
about that. Yeah.
Right. I just
that's why that name was familiar to me too, but
yeah.
I couldn't connect the connection. But yeah, you're correct. Carry on.
I just remember Brizer at the time that everyone was saying she was making a documentary about high up pedophiles or something, and then she has a car crash, and seemingly she was like speeding as if she was trying to escape from someone. But I don't know. I wasn't there. You know, as we've mentioned in this this review a number of times. You know, it's difficult to say anything because we physically weren't there at that time. But yeah, Pox has logged off. He had to go, and I'd just like to thank him for coming on. I always enjoy his inputs. I always enjoy collaborating with him. He mentioned authenticity, and you Brizer, you mentioned it. Blackbird mentioned it, and you know, we're in a time now where AI is becoming more, I would say, sophisticated. I won't say it's like mutating into some super genius. It's advancing. It's filling in different parts of our lives, and you will have, and maybe we already have them, and we just don't know. You'll have AI people, you know, on the TV. You'll have AI YouTubers. You won't know that they don't actually exist, that they're just ones and zeros. But you know, you'll have AI. You'll have influencers who are AI simulations, and you guys mentioned that it's a terrible state of affairs when you get it into your head that nothing is real. I think that's very dangerous, and that enters the kind of Q-tard territory. However, on the other hand, then you have the sheeple who just believe everything they're told, and we have to find a happy medium. And I would say that, for example, I go out for a jog 2 or 3 times a week, and you know, most times there will be a clear blue sky, and I look up and I see about 3 or 4 airplanes spraying wherever the sun is. It's always wherever the sun is, and I know that when I'm jogging back, there's going to be a massive blanket covering the sky. The sky, you know, the intensity, the light intensity is going to drop, and it's going to be very dull. And I know that's artificial. And you know, people like me could start becoming despondent and saying, "This, you know, this is the Truman Show. We're living in a kind of goldfish bowl." But then there are days when you get clear blue skies. It doesn't happen very often now, but there are days when you get clear blue skies. There are days when you can see natural clouds, the clouds of your youth. So, you know, it's important to not get too bogged down in, you know, the artificiality, and the holy grail of the 21st century will be authenticity. And I'd just like to also say, Brizer, thank you for hosting this. I've enjoyed this chat. And I also would like to thank Blackbird for coming on and giving his 2 pennies as well.
Yeah, okay. Right, Blackbird, your final thoughts, and then we'll just go around as well. Just marks out of 10 for this. And also, if you want to tell people where everybody is, Blackbird, you're doing your show, so please plug that.
Oh, well, great. Thanks again for having me on. I hate Pox had to dash off. I enjoyed his comments as always, and enjoyed everyone's comments. And like I said, you know, watching this film this week with these eyes was quite the experience. And I appreciate y'all for making that happen. And I hope everyone enjoys our 2 cents worth on this film. You know, I guess the big thing is we're in an information war, and you just kind of get your mind around that idea that, you know, war is deception and information can be used to deceive. And so we've got to really, as people that are trying to get truth out there, we have to understand the battlefield we're up against. And like I said, watching this and the run up to 9/11 and what the world has been like since 9/11, because tactics like these are being used in every nation. That's the thing, is this isn't just happening in the United States, it's happening everywhere. This idea of just marketing things, and you're talking about Edward Bernays, how to change minds, and just that they can cast a spell and make you believe anything. And that is very powerful. And I just heard that George Soros was buying up, hundreds of radio stations in the United States in the run up to the elections. So trying to influence people by not only pushing the lies, but the most heinous lie of all, lying by omission, not allowing people like us to be heard in the public square of opinion. So that's the thing. And going back to the Solomon Asch experiments on group conformity, Solomon Asch determined he could basically manipulate up to 74% of public opinion if he had the authority figure compromised and the peer group compromised. But if one truth advocate entered into the equation, that number would go from 74% down to less than 5%. So this is the effect, actual truth has on this house of cards that they're trying to cast on us. So just once again, really enjoyed today, and I appreciate y'all having me on. I hope everyone has a great Sunday. Thanks again.
Yeah, and marks out of 10?
Oh, definitely 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Wow, that's okay. Good one, Blackbird. Okay. And Btwixt as well. Last thoughts on? Oh, Frederick, also you do a radio show every Saturday on RBN. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm the world's worst for self-promotion. Sorry about that. Yes, I have a show that goes out at 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern on RBN, Republic Broadcasting Network, and the Spreaker Network. And also on Sunday nights on RBN, they are replaying the old Breakfast Club series that Golden Pipe and I did for 7 years, and you were one of our Pathfinders. Yes,
I was indeed.
And they're taking the second hour of all those old Breakfast Club shows, editing them down and playing them as a standalone show on Sunday nights after Mr. Robert Rayvolt. And this just in, I just found out I'm going to be substituting for Mr. Robert Rayvolt tonight on his show from 11 to 1. And I will also be on with Mike Gaddy at 10 to do a tribute for the late, great Mr. John Kaminsky. So anyway, you can follow me on Gab, Twitter, all social media as Blackbird9. Search for Blackbird9 and you'll find me.
Okay, that's great. And Btwixt, any last thing, and then we'll finish it down.
No, I've nothing left to say. I'd probably give this maybe 8 out of 10. I think it's.
Yeah, I'll go 8.5 and 9, something like that. Because I think it was, having watched it for the first time, but I have heard about it before, and I said I was always thinking I have to watch this, and then watching it and going, wow, it did hit home big time, and it was condensed, to say, very well into an hour and a half, and everything, all the points were all made, bang, 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 one after the other. It was very well done, and
yeah.
No matter what we think about the actors in real life, what they're about, right? Like De Niro and Hoffman, and they're all part of that Hollywood clique. But when they put on that show again, it's another show, but they are telling us what's going on. And considering again it was 25 years ago, it's as relevant now as it was back then, and even more so, I think. So I would urge people to go and watch that. Recommend it totally. I'd also urge people to get Btwixt's latest book, which I finished reading there last week, called The Chosen Penguin. A very, very good read. Btwixt, I'm sure you put that in the show notes there. I know you do that generally, but a really, really good book again, which basically replaces humans with penguins, and it's the same kind of story, a kind of an animal farm on ice, if you want. I think that's a good description of it. So Yeah, thanks guys for doing that, and thanks to Pox as well for all of that. And yeah, hopefully we'll do another one soon. Yeah, maybe Eyes Wide Shut, I think, is another good one. I think we should be looking at that one. So if we want to look at that one further down the line. So okay guys, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for everything. Great show, really enjoyed it, and hope everyone has a good time, a good day, good evening, wherever you are. Take care, and we'll see you next time.